Muriro on Monday on Star FM. Muriro on Monday. Brace yourself. It's a hard hat area.
Star FM sounding good all the time. Good evening and thank you for making us your number one. Here's hoping you've had a pleasant Monday. I am Linda Muriro. It is 25 minutes before 7 o'clock, and as always on a day and time as this, we discuss issues to take Zimbabwe forward. Now, each year at an appointed time, the business sector will meet, they will craft a theme, have keynote speeches and panelists to proffer and debate ideas and concepts, share working experiences, resolutions made, and in this crucible or gango, the main aim is to create a user-friendly working environment. Now, last week, the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, ZNCC, converged in Victoria Falls for its 2024 Congress, which was held under the theme Unlocking New Frontiers for Sustainable Industrialization and Climate-Smart Business Growth. Tonight on the show, we do a post-mortem of this meeting of business leaders which took place on Wednesday and Thursday. What did the business leaders discuss? How robust were discussions on the current business environment and how it can be improved? Were solutions proffered on the energy challenges in light of the vagaries of climate change, which has adversely depleted our major source of power? And on the new structured currency framework, did business and government have an honest discussion on the ZiG currency and how it can be improved to become the dominant currency? We discuss this and more on the show tonight.
Is Muriro on Monday on Star FM. Muriro on Monday. Brace yourself. It's a hard hat area.
And I'm honored to have in studio Industry and Commerce Minister, Honorable Mangaliso. Honorable Minister, good evening, and thank you very much for finding time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening.
Good evening, thank you for having me, and good evening to the listeners.
All right, and we also have in studio ZNCC Chamber of Commerce outgoing President Mike Kamungeremo. Mike, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Linda. Thank you for having me.
All right, and as always, we value the contribution of you, our listeners, so do take part in our discussion via our studio WhatsApp number 0772162651, and later on we will open the phone lines 0714414413. We are also joined in studio by the incoming president of the ZNCC, who I'm sure he's here to learn the ropes from the outgoing president, Mr. Tapuwa Karoro. Mr. Karoro, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Linda, and good evening to your listeners.
All right, now, Honorable Minister, you were the guest of honor at the ZNCC Congress, which you officially opened on Wednesday. Give us your reflections. What were the key takeaways from the event?
Thank you, Linda. I think the first thing is really to acknowledge that as government, we value the platforms such as the Congress that ZNCC holds every year. And this year was even bigger and better because it came just after government has introduced the monetary measures that we did. We were quite happy with the progress report that ZNCC gave in terms of the resolutions that they made last year, in terms of the key issues that they sought to achieve over the immediate past year. And we are happy that we continue to increase our collaboration with ZNCC as government. A platform like this, where we interact with the private sector, is one that we really value and cherish. And we had so many points that we took home in terms of what the business feel we need to do going forward.
All right, and Honorable Minister, the theme was Unlocking New Frontiers for Sustainable Industrialization and Climate-Smart Business Growth. How does it speak to the envisaged Zimbabwe Industrial New Development Policy?
So, the most important thing to note really is that the future is green, and I'm happy that ZNCC came up with such a profound and futuristic theme. Where they already envisage the importance of being sustainable as we grow. Just to briefly highlight on our upcoming ZNIDP, Our view and feeling is that it is important to align our NDS2, which will be starting beginning 2026, with our Zimbabwe National Industrial Development Policy 2, which is a successor to the one that ended last year. So we are coming up with an interim plan. Details will come, but we are calling it the Industrial Reconstruction and Growth Plan, which seeks really to address quite a number of fundamentals within the manufacturing sector in the main, and industry and commerce in general, so that when we launch NDS2 together with ZNIDP2, we are poised for accelerated growth which is sustainable, growth which is green, as envisaged in the theme that ZNCC came up with. So a lot of measures will be taken really to make sure that as a country we are able to take full advantage of our competitive advantages that we have, which I believe some of them we could have done better, and that's why I want to bring all of those together.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Now, coming to you, Mike, Mr. Kamgeremo, as the outgoing ZNCC president, what were the highlights, in your view, resolutions and outcomes from a ZNC's perspective from the Congress that you held?
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. I think the first highlight is that the Congress marked the end of my term, and my brother Yeta Pia was inaugurated as the new president. So we have come together as part of the handover process so that there's smooth transition. Everything else that we had done can then be carried over as we go. So in terms of the key highlights from the Congress, one key topic which was in line with the theme was on industrialization. And what panelists were unpacking was the possibility of industrializing through in a sustainable way using the green revolution, bearing in mind that we have got a lot of fossil fuels and the world is calling for us to abandon the fossil fuels. And we're now saying, is it then possible for us, for example, to value add our lithium without using our coal? It's a subject that's key, and attendees debated it, and then people acknowledge the fact that some of the countries that are advocating for departure from fossil fuels have actually used the fossil fuels to develop themselves, and probably we may still need to make use of our coal to generate electricity, to heat our minerals going forward. But it was underscored as business to make sure that as we industrialize, we also industrialize sustainably. One other topic that was also discussed was the issue of the informal sector. It's a hot issue given the size of our informal sector and how it's affecting formal businesses. We have received quite a number of reports from members that have been saying some informal traders gather in front of their shops and sell exactly their same products. They sell them cheaper because they are not paying tax and they don't have cost structures which are compared to the formal businesses. It was also highlighted that there's an opportunity to harness the informal sector and encourage them to formalize, pay taxes, get registered. And there's also a government's role in it by making sure that they incentivize formalization. There must be benefits for becoming formal. And at the same time, we also agreed as executives that we can actually also partner with these informal players and also encourage them to formalize. It will help the economy. It will help everybody going forward. There was also a report that there's an influx of counterfeit products on the market. And people are actually saying some of these are being packaged by these informal players. And there's need then to make sure that we regularize and formalize them so that we can control what they do and we avoid these that are coming with a lot of negative benefits, negative effects on the health of our people. Then the hot issue that everyone was waiting for was the issue of the review of the multi-currency and the ZIG that was introduced, the new currency that was introduced, as well as the new monetary measures. And what came out, because businesses had things that they thought had not been fulfilled that the governor had promised. For example, the issue of the non-negotiable certificate of deposit, which had been promised to be given to businesses that were owed money from the old auction. And it was good that government responded that those are actually coming very soon, and also the fact that what we requested as business to make the certificates tradable is actually going to be done. So it's actually one key takeaway that also came from that Congress. And we also took advantage of the Congress to have awards where we recognized businesses that did well in the past year. And then as part of that, we had the handover, takeover of the ZNCC leadership. So in a nutshell, that is what transpired at the 2024 Congress. And most of these deliberations would then be summed up in the form of resolutions, which the new president would then take to the minister, and then together they make sure they are implemented during this next year that's coming.
All right, it is 7 o'clock, and you are tuned to Star FM, sounding good all the time. I am Linda Muriro, and I'm joined in studio by Industry and Commerce Minister, Honorable Minister Ndlovu, and I also have in studio ZNCC outgoing President Mike Kamgeremu and the new President Tapiwa Karoro, as we have a post-mortem of the ZNCC Congress that was held in Victoria Falls last week. And you can take part via your WhatsApp contributions on 0772162651, and I will open the phone line after the news at 7 o'clock. You can take note of the number 0714414413. Now, Honorable Minister, as Mike has rightfully said, I know there's going to be the formality of the ZNCC leadership coming with the resolutions, but you did witness and how the issue of informality was a huge debate at the Congress, with the National Competitiveness Commission explaining the correlation between a country's informality rate and its competitiveness. How is your ministry tackling the issue of informality? I know at the Congress, the business leaders were divided to say, is informality really a bad thing, or to what extent can the formal businesses and the so-called informal sector coexist?
Linda, we cannot be a country that advocates for informality. I think we need to draw a distinction between an informal business and a small to medium business. You can be small to medium, but do your things formally. In fact, formally means legally. And we cannot say we are advocating for illegality. Businesses that are operating outside such laws, it's very difficult to regulate them. Right now, we did a SNAP survey. You had expired products that are there. You had some counterfeit products that are there. But more importantly, these are people who are siphoning the US dollar that is there and not paying taxes. We have set up an interministerial team because you would appreciate this really. It's more on the Ministry of SMEs, and because of the legal connotations as well. We have got the Ministry of Home Affairs, the police. We have brought in local government, the local authorities, because we believe that through their bylaws, they should be able to deal with informality that is growing. So we are working together. It's one area that we have prioritized as a ministry because we are seeing the impact it has on the stability of our economy, on the stability of our formal businesses, and we believe that we need to tackle it with great urgency.
Now, on that, Minister, I think one of the issues that was raised was the issue around prohibitive licensing fees, which some industry players said the reasons behind the high rate of informality that we have witnessed as a country. How is your ministry addressing some of these issues in coordination with the other ministries that you talk about? The ease of doing business, where the unavailability of one-stop centers, for instance, for registration and licensing have been attributed as one of the causes that has resulted in small players then opting to remain informal.
It's a fair point to note that as a government, we have a responsibility to continue looking into the issue of ease and cost of doing business. So one of our key pillars in our reconstruction and growth plan that I just touched on is looking at exactly that pillar of ease and cost of doing business. I'm not so sure if really that is the compelling reason for informality. To be honest, people just want to go and set up. this interministerial or multi-stakeholder team that I'm talking about will also take the opportunity to interact with most of the informal sectors just to identify what the challenges are. I know that there are instances where compliance costs can be very high, and there's a conversation ongoing already with some of the local authorities, because this is where most of the costs are emanating from, to see how best we can collectively address that issue. Ultimately, we need to have businesses that are complying with the laws. You would imagine, as we speak, the Finance Act of 2024 already imposes a withholding tax for the formal businesses should they supply anyone in the informal market. The end result is that the consumer, you and me, are having to access these products at a much higher price than we would have had these people formalized. So I think it is in the best interest of all of us as a country, as an economy, as business people who are in there, to formalize. And we should definitely be also looking at the incentives regime, as Mike has highlighted, to say, how do we make sure that people see benefits in doing their businesses formally?
All right, and Tapiwa, you've just assumed the presidency of the ZNCC, and still on the issue of informality, we also did hear some of the captains of industry alluding to the issue that even some of the big formal businesses, so to speak, are also setting up the informal businesses to also evade these issues that we talk about, the high taxes, licensing fees and what have you. As the ZNCC, what do you proffer as a solution moving forward, as you're going to be meeting with your parent ministry to discuss this? What are your solutions as the ZNCC to the issue of informality?
Thank you, Linda. I think I need to start off by saying that the chamber, the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, is 100% in concurrence with what the minister has clearly labeled, that informality relates to issues of legality. So the moment we start operating outside of the legal framework, we are going against the rules and regulations that we have set as a country. So we cannot also, having said that, be blind to the fact that there are a number of extenuating circumstances that may influence various players, big and small, to want to trade the informal or in the informal sector. So as the chamber, I think part of our main mandate is to appreciate and to understand what are those driving forces, which the Congress was able to do in terms of creating a platform that allows us to have a very frank and open discussion about what's influencing players to go informal, whether they be a big corporate or it's a mom and pop store that has just started. And I think it is through platforms like the Congress itself, continued engagement within the chamber with members, continued engagement with the government and all critical stakeholders, to start looking at which areas we can attack, how we can incentivize various players, big or small, to be informal, and how we can also ensure that we've got sustainable business operating within our economy.
Right. This is the discussion we are having. It is 7 minutes before 7 o'clock. Before we get into now Indaba, you can come through on 0772162651. I see a number of interesting messages that are through on our WhatsApp platform, and I will open the phone line after the news at 7 o'clock. 0714414413. I have in studio Industry and Commerce Minister Mangaliso Tandlovu, as well as Mike Ngeremu, who is the outgoing president of the ZNCC, and Tapiwa Karoro, the new president of the ZNCC, as we have a post-mortem of what transpired at the just ended Congress. So you can come through with your contributions there. Now, Mike, some critics and industrialists have said that the desire to open new economic frontiers in line with the Congress's theme have been hampered largely because of the delay to have a new industrial development policy. The minister did speak into that. Do you agree? And what has been the effect created by the absence of an industrial policy?
Thank you very much, Linda. I think the policy provides the direction. The policy provides the guidance in our quest to build our industry. And it also captures the incentives for industrialization. So without necessarily saying that I concur with those that are saying it's hampering efforts to unlock new frontiers, I would like to believe where there is a gap, where the policy is not there, then it means the direction is missing. It would be good for us to have the policy in place. I think the minister responded to that. There's already one that's coming. So we would really welcome that.
All right, and Honorable Minister, there is a school of thought that one of the ways to open new frontiers again, with the theme of that, the Congress that we're talking about, as envisaged by the theme, is to repackage, revolutionize, and modernize the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair for it to become more relevant to the new needs of the industry, both nationally and globally. Do you agree with that school of thought? And if so, what innovative measures do you think it needs so that it does not become almost predictable?
Thank you, Linda. Indeed, there is scope for ZITF to modernize. In fact, they are miles ahead of us. Those who attended ZITF this year, they even launched their 5-year strategic plan, so to speak, which also speaks to how they are modernizing their exhibition center. They've remodeled the whole structure that is there, including a new convention center, 5-star and 3-star hotels that will be coming in there. But having said that, we need to really locate the role that ITF plays or ought to play. Primarily, it is a platform where we bring business together, mainly for networking as well as opening frontiers for international trade. And I think they've been doing a fairly good job at that, except that, in my view, we are not as wide as we should be in terms of people who come to exhibit as well as people who come to network there. So this is an area which I believe we need to do a lot more. Again, I still believe there is a missing link or program that ought to be there, where industry comes together to discuss, more like an industry indaba, to say, from an industry perspective, where do we want to take our economy? And this is something that I will be engaging the private sector on, to say, should we have this modeled around ZITF, or should we have a separate indaba where we really speak industry and commerce, so that it complements ZITF. But I believe that those who think ZITF should modernize, I am 100% behind that, and I'm happy that they are already doing something about it.
All right, it is a few minutes before we get into the news at 7 o'clock, and I see the phone line is already buzzing. I will take calls after the news at 7 o'clock. The number is 0714414413, and the WhatsApp number is 0772162651. I have in studio Industry and the Commerce Minister, Minister Ndlovu, as well as the leadership of the ZNCC, the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce. Now, before we get into the news, Mike, you recently signed an MOU in Korea on trade and investment. What is the significance of the MOU, and which areas are you expecting to cooperate and open new frontiers on?
Thank you very much. So we signed 2 MOUs with the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and also the Korea International Trade Association. What we are trying to do there is to increase trade and investment between Zimbabwe and Korea. So what will be happening going forward, which I'm sure my brother Tapiwa will be running with, is to have joint business forums, bring together Zimbabwean business people and Korea business people. The whole idea being for them to do business on a B2B level when you bring them in one room. So that is what we'll be seeing probably later on this year. So we are very excited with that. And in Korea, but they are very good in manufacturing. They have a very strong high-tech industry. Just to let you know that big brands like Samsung, LG Electronics, they are all from Korea. So those are the kinds of companies that we are seeking to then engage. And then we get new markets, we get new partners. At the end, we get equipment for our industry, and then we get new investors that can come to Zimbabwe. So that was the purpose of the MOUs that we signed.
All right, we continue our discussion after the news at 7 o'clock. Makaterera kune venue yeStar FM nguva dzedu dzasvika pana 7 o'clock topai now indaba.
Now for Zim Papers Radio Broadcasting Division.
and the region, and the other topic was dealing with informality, the case of Zimbabwe, as well as a review of the structured currency perspectives and the recommendations. And a lot of debate came, especially on the issue of dealing with informality in Zimbabwe and the issue of the structured currency review. So do come through with your contributions on our studio WhatsApp number 0772 162651, and the phone line is 0714414413. I will now be opening the phone line for you to come through with any questions or contributions that you have regards our topic of discussion tonight. Now, Honorable Minister, your ministry has been implementing the local content strategy under the Buy Zimbabwe campaign. How have those efforts fared given obstacles such as the El Nino induced drought, absence of capital in the local market, among other factors?
Thank you again, Linda. We launched the local content strategy in 2019. I happen to have been the culprit there as well. I was in industry and commerce. And what we sought to achieve at the time was to encourage Zimbabweans to consume what is made locally. We're also encouraging our manufacturers to localize as much as possible our production processes, to use as much as possible raw materials or intermediate products that are Zimbabwean. I'm happy to say that perhaps also with the intervention of COVID-19, we saw a lot of companies looking inwards to the extent that the latest survey that was done early this year indicated that we have around 80% of local products in our shelves in most major supermarkets, which is a very good step looking at where we are coming from. A lot more still needs to be done. We still need to be sure if there are no untoward elements within there. When I spoke to some people, they of the view that we need to interrogate this, see if these are not repackaged products, because they believe there is no correspondence with our production figures. But we are quite happy that we are seeing local products in our shelves. We are quite happy that Zimbabweans are more and more conscious about the need to consume what is ours. After all, we are one of the very few remaining non-organic countries. So it really is to our advantage that we look inwards so that we support our own business. So far, I must say I'm happy with the progress, though a lot more can be done.
Right, so the phone line is open 0714414413. So do remember to lower the volume of your radio so that we can hear you. As I always say, it will just give us a nasty feedback, and be sure to be straight to the point so that we can accommodate as many callers as we can. And the issue we are discussing is the issues around informality, ease of doing business, structured currency review, and industrializing Zimbabwe in line with the Minister Ndlovu's mandate of Industry and Commerce. And I also have in studio ZNCC President Tapiwa Karoro and the immediate past President Mike Kamungeremu. So you can come through 0714414413. Star FM, good evening. Yes, good evening. You're through to the program. Your name, please, and where you're calling from?
My name is Trevor. I'm calling from Eborangena.
All right, go ahead, Trevor.
My contribution is on the ease of doing business. In general, when we speak about the cost of compliance in the country, it's a bit on the high side. And I think they need, through the minister, there needs to be a consensus between the different ministries who take care of different requirements. Like, for example, when it's licenses, it be the local government. When it's taxes, the Ministry of Finance, and so forth. When it's EMA, if you're dealing with hazardous substances and so forth, the Ministry of Environment and so forth. The costs of compliance are so high, and that is why it becomes difficult for us as a country to deal with the informalities in the country, because once everything is not ambiguous in terms of the paperwork and also the cost is lower, then automatically you deal with informality. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trevor, for calling through. You know, these are the callers that I enjoy having on the show. And I know my guests in studio are taking note of these contributions. So let's have many of those. The minister has said that he would like to have as much interaction as he can with regards to our issue, our topic of discussion. So 0714 414 413. Star FM, good evening. Hello, yes, you're through to the program. Your name, please, and where you're calling from.
My name is Ransom, and I'm calling from Marlborough.
Go ahead, Ransom.
Yes, my contribution, I think Trevor has captured something. I'm worried mainly for ease of doing business vis-a-vis the issue of compliance. I'll go to the environment straight to say, you go to EMA, they charge you for handling that item, for dangerous substance, even for a group. They charge you for storage. So if you want, let's say, a startup business, you are charged more than 4,000 to 5,000 just to start up. So the costs are very enormous for a patriotic Zimbabwean who have just to join the system and say, I want to be part of the system and try to be a local producer. To us, I think the minister, the harmonization of the whole system, the tax package should be harmonized across all the industrial, the ministries that deal with industry. Only ministry that I saw charging reasonable charges was the Ministry of Industry, where it charges $10 for importing paper. That is plastic, that import license. But still, they will charge you even if you have not started operation. They will charge you for that thing. So you would wonder what kind of complaints you want as a country. Thank you, and offer.
Thank you very much, Ransom, for that contribution. 0714 414 413. I have in studio the Minister of Industry and Commerce, as well as the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, immediate past President Mike Mgeremu, and the President Tapiwa Karoro. Star FM, good evening. All right, 0714 414 413. Do come through, and the studio WhatsApp number is 0772 162 651. And some of the messages. Okay, let me take some more callers. Star FM, hello. Yes, good evening. You're through to the show. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to reiterate. I'm glad the minister is there on the platform. The cost of doing business is too high. That's number one. This is the reason why most of the companies are not complying. The second thing is, I think on Buy Zimbabwe, I think we should also prioritize forex allocation in terms of the banks. We are not getting forex. Even if you are paid in the local currency, trying to promote the ZIG, you are not able to get the foreign currency from the banks. So it's more like you are just stuck whenever you try to sell and everything. So we don't have the capital because our money is just stuck in the bank as local currency. We don't have any forex allocation in there, as what they say on the TVs and everything. Please help us.
All right, thank you very much for that contribution. I'll take my last caller before I come back in studio with responses to that. 0714 414 413. The WhatsApp number is 0772 162 651. I have the Minister of Industry and Commerce, as well as the ZNCC leadership. Star FM, good evening. Taskwera maskwera umapinda mchirongwa.
Ndikufuna ndiri kudomboshawa. From 2015 I started a business ndakavhura taxi bhamba. Then from those years ndaipiwa license necancel. You see, but the start from 2022 cancel yangomira my license. Then from there tinongopiwa mapina every day. Every time pangosvika cancel tikupiwa penalty. Every time pasvika police tikupiwa tikusaina admission of guilty. So you see, the cost here to So in other words, the system is forcing us to be informal. Minister, what you say?
Aiwa, tinotenda chaizvo. Regai timbodzoka kuno mustudio Timboti, Minister Timbo Mapamkano wekuti vange vachipindura. Minister, you've had those contributions that are coming. First, there was Trevor, who spoke about the cost of compliance, Ransom, who spoke about the ease of doing business and the need for harmonization of laws and policies. Our third caller spoke about the cost of business again. In this last caller, but there are issues to do with licensing. Your response, Honorable Minister, to these concerns?
Thank you so much, and allow me to really thank humbly the listeners who have come through, who have given us the feedback. So quite clearly, the people are feeling the brunt of the cost that they have to incur to formalize. That is the feedback that is coming out more pronounced, and it's an issue that I must say I've also been looking at, quite concerned about, which is why our view is that if we are to really come up with an industrial development policy that is more aggressive in terms of growth, we need to have dealt with these issues. So we've prioritized it in terms of this interim or transitional plan that will be coming through, to work with a number of ministries to harmonize as is being proposed, which I strongly agree with by the listeners this evening. I happen to be former Minister of Environment, so when I heard them talk about environment, I wasn't sure if they were not directing it at me. Generally, environmental issues have a potential to affect the generality of the people. So you need to be very careful how you deal with that, especially when it is hazardous substances, as is the case here. The likelihood of anything going wrong and the effect on people's health means that you have to be more than prepared to deal with that. So I guess that's why sometimes people would think that the costs are prohibitive. But generally, I take the comment that we need to look at these costs, even do comparisons. In fact, I do have a report from the National Competitiveness Commission, which was launched by the Permanent Secretary, I think 2 weeks back, which highlights how in a number of areas we compare quite badly with other countries in the region, and we have a challenge to look into that. On the issue of Forex, which was raised, if it were up to me, we would really be moving very fast towards monocurrency. It would be very difficult to have any currency compete with the US dollar. Of course, this is subject to monetary authorities. I'm highlighting this because currently our focus is to try and support the manufacturers, and I've had discussions with the central bank on this, to support the manufacturers who need to import raw materials, so that anyone downstream should not necessarily need to look for foreign currency if the products are supplied locally. But because we have had, it's more than a decade of using US dollar, our love for the US dollar is still there. If I have got my 1,000 ZiG, I want to try and transfer it to the US dollar. We want to get to a point where only those who need the critical support so that they continue manufacturing. And some of them have highlighted that they have struggled to get the USD, and we have engaged the central bank. I really want us to get to that point where whether I've got ZiG or I've got USD, it shouldn't matter, because I'm able to get the goods and services in country that I want. The last caller, I can only suspect that it came after Finance and Zimra said councils should only issue permits to those small businesses who have tax certificates. I can only suspect that is the case. Unfortunately, he didn't specify why the local authority stopped issuing the permits. But I know at the time I was a member of parliament somewhere, and I had to engage the Minister of Finance when I got the vendors who were selling vegetables saying now Zimra say they want tax certificates, which was then clarified by the Minister of Finance at the time. So I wouldn't be too sure what's happening. This is my suspicion. Thanks, Linda.
All right, so I have in studio Industry and Commerce Minister Ngobisi Tandlovu, as well as ZNCC leadership, the President Tapiwa Karoro, and immediate past President Mike Kamgeremu. Now, Tapiwa, the issue of some solutions that were proffered, or as the Executive Director of the National Competitiveness Commission gave us a regional view on this. He made reference to other countries such as Rwanda and Kenya that have come up with the segregation of levies and taxes for startups, SMEs, where there's a difference on what is levied, a startup, an SME, and big corporates, and incentives being given, like the case of India. Are there some of solutions that we can also bring on board? Because whilst I've had the three of you gentlemen concurring that informality is not good, I think the issue is around what then are the solutions, given the number of listeners that we've had and the concerns that they've raised.
Thank you, Linda. I think it's safe to say that the concurrence is on matters of substance. Substantially, what are we talking about? What we're talking about is that we do need to formalize business within our country. Now, we cannot turn a blind eye to the factors that are driving a number of players, like we said, and like we pointed out, big and small, to go informal. I mean, just the three callers alone were giving you almost a very similar reason or reasons as to why they have seen it, or they potentially are going informal. Indeed, I think the cost of business, as the callers and also came out at the Congress, the cost of doing business is high. The cost of compliance is something a number of players are complaining about. Now, what are the solutions? I think in the robust discussions that were done at the Congress, you're absolutely right. There was talk about how do we benchmark? How do we look at how other countries are handling this issue of informality? How are they incentivizing informal business to become formal? But having said that, I think it was also quite clear at the Congress that we also have some structural issues that we need to address. And it's all well and good that we can look at some of these solutions, we can indeed benchmark, but until and unless we also resolve structural issues such as the currency issue, it's a challenge. We have issues of power, also being a challenge, and if we can address those as part of a more holistic approach to getting players turning from informal to formal, it becomes a more sustainable way of turning around the large informality that we're seeing within the commercial or within the broader space of commerce within our country.
All right, let me take some more calls. Star FM, good evening. Star FM, hello? All right, the number is 0714414413. Star FM, good evening. All right, 0714414413, 0772162651. Star FM, good evening. I'm well, thank you. You're through to the program. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My question or my comment is to the minister, just to ask, in our quest for industrialization, why can't we identify strategic informal units? I'll give example like Magaba, into Area 8, etc. Then we have a program or a framework of nurturing those businesses into big businesses. Like a deliberate framework, as government, we know that this thing is definitely going to come out as what we intend. And we need to understand that in Zimbabwe, whatever we are going through as part of informalization of our economy, we are not the first people to do so. Other countries, they've gone through the same, but their government or their ministries of commerce, they've taken a deliberate stand to nurture those small businesses or informal sectors into big businesses. And as a result, now we have got China as a big economy. But at one point in time, we had Chinese products, these products, they're inferior, but they made a deliberate step in nurturing those small or informal businesses.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Star FM, hello? Star FM, good evening. Yes, please lower the volume of your radio and go ahead with your contribution.
Okay. Linda, I think nyaya tinayo hombe muZimbabwe ndeyakadai. So I would want to exonerate the Minister of Industry and Commerce on this issue that we are talking about, because the issue is coming from the Minister of Finance. As you can look at it right now, one wakawanda was to formalize just because cost avanosangana now, like izvezvi tax range increase. If you want to import the duty, even if you want to import the raw materials, the levies and the duties are very high. So the kuita kuti competitiveness yedu ive pasi zvakanyanya. If you look at it,
all right, I don't.
Africa, it will be costing you. Zimbabwe, it will be. I will just give an example. It maybe in cost $20, but in South Africa, you find it costs even $10. So I think nyaya taxes nema levies ikaongororwa inogona kutibatsira kuti tikwanise kudzikisa cost of product, especially on raw materials. Then number two, nyaya yekuwanikwa kweforex nevanhu vari auction. We have got a lot of scenarios whereby we find that munhu ari kuda kuti aimport but is not getting cash from the auction system. I think ipapo pakagadziriswa tinogona kubatsira.
Aiwa, tinotenda chaizvo nepfungwa dzenyu. Regai titori vamwe vateereri. Star FM, hello? Star FM, good evening.
Yes, hello, good.
Taswera maswera utaure zvenyu.
Okay, from my end, what we're thinking to tell about my results. Okay, because the reason why my taxes were increased, it was to try to cater now national revenue for the country. So we cannot go against that. But other than that, is to embrace my taxes are good. And how can we work with that? My taxes are good is by diversifying my markets is also. But you consider the cost of starting a business, because everything is centralized on one place generally. Like if you look at Harare, because if you try to look back over cinema before, everything was centered on Harare. So that focus, it means that Harare is now the main place the nation will be looking for more revenue from Harare. So everyone will be coming to start a business in there. So it is increasing more informality, more taxes, because it's only one place that is generating a lot of revenue for the whole nation. Other than if we try to diversify markets and create new markets in remote areas that are developing.
All right. No, thank you very much. I'm sure we've had your point. Thank you very much. We'd like to take some more callers. 0714414413. The studio WhatsApp number is 0772162651. I'll take 2 more callers before I come back to my panelists in studio. Star FM, hello? Yes, you're through to the program. Good evening.
Good evening. I think as a nation, we are overtaxing ourselves. We outcompete ourselves in foreign markets because we can't export our products, but do not understand for 45% taxation, sales tax, VAT, so there are so many facets of competitiveness here in the international stage because Argentina leeway to maneuver in terms of pricing, in terms of the product availability. Downstream, let's say,
all right, thank you very much for that contribution. And Mike, coming to you, it seems like all the callers tataura kuti pane nyaya industrialization, the structured currency review, tichitata some recommendations and what have you, but it seems vese vari kunyanyoita center on the issue of informalization. What are the policy implications of the informal sector for Zimbabwe's economic development and social welfare in your view?
Thank you very much, Linda. And we realize that almost all the points that they are raising are exactly the same matters that we have already raised as the Chamber of Commerce. And what I actually appeal to these callers is for them to join their Chamber of Commerce. We need to speak with one voice.
We
when
will
it comes-
definitely be sending an invoice for that advert.
it's not an advert, it's a solution to these issues. Because we find even the minister, those are the same issues that we'll be taking to the minister. The good thing is that when you are part of the chamber, all your matters will be forwarded and then given to the minister. But back to your question, what the policy implementation, policy implication of the informal sector. You know, like what the minister highlighted, that there's the issue of illegality here. So you can't then control the informal sector. I think we have seen quite a number of products, some are, that are being said to be underweight on the market, some just counterfeit, and some being done in conditions that actually expose our people to big risks. So once we do not control it, then it can be a big problem. And then secondly, like we also highlighted, that some formal businesses are actually under threat. You see those that are selling uniforms, people gathered in front of the shop selling the same uniform at a lower price. And when you look at it now, there are also corruption issues around that. I think the Dombosha caller highlighted.
This is the issue then that we must deal with. As was said at the Congress, we did then hear kuti mamwe mabusiness acho mahombe iwayo ari kuzoenda unovhura ma-side hustle acho atiri kuti ari informal to evade ma-issues ari kutaurwa nevateereri aya, the high taxes and things like that. How then do we address the issue? We are all in agreement that informality is illegality to a certain extent. How then do we ensure that these businesses are compliant zvinokudzawo futi homwe yenyika as they all pay my taxes and stuff like that? I think then that remains the issue. How then do we address to ensure that those who are informal become compliant?
What you have been hearing from the callers is on the cost of compliance. They are saying, if I try to comply, the charges are too high. Someone was talking about $5,000 that's being charged before they even start doing business. So what we then need to do is to simplify the processes. And then, like we said, when someone is a startup, have a different fee that's being charged to those to encourage them to comply. Give them even holidays. Give them some incentives for doing that. For example, when we are encouraging rural industrialization and we have got special economic zones, let's have specific benefits that we are tailor-making for these people so that they know that once they formalize, they will have access to those benefits. This is why I said it's not just an issue of government. We have also seen it from the private sector perspective, that where we are working with some of these players, we can also help them. For example, one member who is into clothing manufacturing has actually started a program where they are inviting tailors that are ideally informal to actually make some garments for them. And then they are then saying to them, you now need to formalize so that we continue giving you a market for the product. And we are told it's actually working. So if we do that as formal businesses, to also encourage that, at the same time, government creating a conducive policy framework by flagging out things that we've already highlighted. There are quite a number of even statutory instruments which were passed, which are affecting businesses. And once that is sorted out, then people can formalize.
And before I come to the Honorable Minister, Tapiwa, we had as a panelist on that the discussion of informality, where Edgar's CEO, Mr. Savias Mushosho, was saying that formalization is unattractive. And when you look at Edgar's, it's obviously one of the worst affected or most affected varimu clothing sector imomo nenyaya dzataurwa navakamgeremu vari kutenga hembe vovaridza pamberi pemashop. But he alluded to the fact that formalization is unattractive, calling for simplified registration processes, because at the end of the day, everyone stands to benefit. And another call was made for inclusive policies for gradual formalization. What do you make of those recommendations?
I think those recommendations are spot on. I think I also need to hasten to say that this conversation we're having shows the breadth and depth of the Chamber of Commerce. If you realize, we are talking about the informal sector, and the minister in his initial remarks as this issue came up talked about, let's be very clear, are we talking about informal or SMEs? And if I come to your point, you highlighted Edgar's, which is a listed entity. So you realize that the chamber as a platform is actually covering your small and your large players, and this is where the melting pot of conversation and the ability to come up with solutions then comes about. So I think from a chamber's perspective, it's really not for us to say what's right or what's wrong as these views and issues come up from our membership. But I think what our role is to then to advocate, because there's obviously a clarion call, like you've highlighted. I think industry or business is really talking loudly about we need to look at the cost of doing business. We need to look at our tax regime. We need to look at our compliance costs. That clarion call is very clear. I think the minister at the Congress and on this platform has actually said this is something that they're looking at and something that they're doing so quite seriously. And I think as the chamber, our job becomes, or continues to be, let's make the call louder, let's engage government, and let's look at a balanced view. I think that's also another point we need to consider. When you are on the street or in your office and you are trading, you are faced with the realities of doing business. But I think one of the benefits of becoming a member of the chamber is you also, through these engagements, begin to appreciate the other side of the table, if I were to put it that way.
All right, I'm going to hold you there as I take another caller. Star Family. All right, 0714414413. I'll take some more callers before I go to the minister to respond. 0714414413, 0772162651 is the studio WhatsApp number. And the message that is coming through on WhatsApp, you can also establish an informal economy development agency to oversee the formalization, growth, and integration of the informal sector into the mainstream economy. The mandate would include developing inclusive policies and programs, providing business registration, training, and capacity building, facilitating access to finance, markets, and technology, enhancing social protection and labor standards, fostering partnerships with private sector, NGOs, and development agencies. And this is a long message. This agency would help increase tax revenue and GDP contribution, improve working conditions and social security, enhance economic diversification and competitiveness, support innovation and entrepreneurship, promote inclusive economic growth and development. Star FM, good evening. Taswera maswera ndokumbira mutaurise. Hello, ndachikumbira muwedzere volume yenyu. Hello. Taswera maswera taurai mapinda mchirongwa.
Sinotenda. Mubvunzo wangu uri kuna Minister of Industry and Commerce. Uri maererano nenyaya yema-counterfeit products, especially ndakatarisana nhau industrial area yakafanana neMbare. Pane ma-counterfeit products akawanda ari kukanganisa even ukatarisa tumadorodoro tacho atiri kugadzirwa. Chaona kuti tumwe totokonzeresa kuti vanoita kunge vanhu vaita mamwe madzadzi. Nodeka kuti vanenge vatomwa tunhu vanenge vasingatozivi kana kuti alcohol content yacho yakaita sei, of which zvinhu izvozvo zviri kugadzirwa muno muZimbabwe. Handizivi kuti tingabatsirikana.
All right, Star FM, let me take another caller. Dofunga mvunzo wanga wanzwikwa na Minister. Star FM. Hi, how are you?
Government is clear to punish zvakakwana vanhu vari kuita. As you can see, the cost of running business, that's why vanobhadhara mataxes and everything. But ukazoenda mataxi unoona zvinhu zvakachipa kuwandisa. Zvakachipa but zvasi maguru hazvinobhadhara tax hazvinokuita sei. But when they are running there, vachitenga ikoko, Muhammad Musa is suffering but ari kubhadhara matax and everything. So it's at the end of the day, you shall see that everyone achapedzera kungoda kuita zvinhu zviri informal. Because wacho vari kuita zvinhu zviri informal vari kungosiyiwa vachitobudirira vachivaka mamashoni vachita sei. Ari kufara kuita business in a proper way and it is affected.
Aiwa, tinotenda chaizvo.
And it's trade, but vari kuita informal, they are not punished, but they are growing and they are blooming.
Tinotenda chaizvo Minister vari muno regai timbovapa mukana wekupindura the last caller there. Honorable Minister calling for punitive measures. Vamwe vabvunza the issue of counterfeit products. Let me take my last caller. Star Family.
No, the cost of formalizing is too much in our country.
We look at the issues to do with tax, 15% VAT on most products. Kana wapedza kudaro, yearly you're supposed to pay 25% income tax on all your profits. Kana une mushandi wako 102 as a formal trader, you're supposed to register them for payee, which ranges about 20 to 40% of what they are giving and spending with proper marriage. Saka you will find kuti most of the informal traders havasi vanonotanga vaine capital. Self-employment yatiri kutoita yekutoti kuda kutotira kutobaradza bhatanidza. So the incentive really yekuti uformalize uri kuona kuti it's going to eat into the way of living yangu any nyangu yanandagadzira. Saka unotoona kuti it's easier and it's better to stay in uri informal than wongochitadzidza kudaro straight.
All right, thank you very much for that contribution. And Honorable Minister, I think this view aligns with what one of the executives from one of the country's big corporates made reference to say, you know, that in informal sector, they're actually playing a role by sending their kids, extended family to school, so they must remain. But your comments, Honorable Minister, to these contributions that have come through from the listeners?
Thank you so much. So many of them. I hope to the listeners I'll be able to respond to all of them. Maybe I might have to start with the last one going backwards. Well, the last one really is to echo what others have said, that the cost of formalization is very high, and as I've highlighted also, we have isolated this as our top priority. And as you would imagine, it involves quite a number of other government departments and agencies, including your local government, including the Treasury, and other agencies. Emma was highlighted among others. So we want to make sure that we work under the whole of government to just make sure that these are streamlined and we are able to analyze the weight of the regulatory costs on business and come up with a way that is supportive of formalization. Again, the issue of penalties, I think that we will continue to review. It's sad to hear people who have formalized highlighting that the informal seem to be getting away with murder, as it were. They seem to be doing their business, reaping maximum profits, breaking the laws in the process. It cannot be fashionable. So we just need to say, how do we encourage formalization without making them feel the cost burden that they seem to be highlighting here. Counterfeit products, there are so many risks associated with counterfeit products. What I can say is that the end result is that the consumer is the most affected, and we have to protect the consumer at all costs. Businesses are also affected because these are people producing things that are not certified. Some of them are not legal, and they are dumping them on consumers. Yet there are people who are following established standards in the process. There was a very brilliant proposal, the long message. I would love to read that slowly in a different platform. I hope Linda will be able to forward it to me.
Yes,
the establishment of an informal economic development agency.
Yes.
You would imagine, so this is a conversation that I will obviously have with the Minister of Women Affairs, Communities, Small to Medium Enterprises, to say these are the ideas maybe they can look into. So generally, we are working closely with the Ministry of SMEs, because small to medium enterprises fall under their purview, to see how, and I think there was a point before that, on nurturing small to medium businesses. We are setting up a team that will work closely to create strong linkages between small businesses and bigger businesses. For a number of reasons, this will benefit our economy. They should be able, I think Mike spoke of some of the strategies in the textile to clothing sector, where you can create these backward and forward linkages working together, where we can also come up with incubation strategies to nurture and grow some of these small to medium enterprises. So this is something that I would definitely discuss with the Minister of SMEs. I think quite a number of them were about the cost of doing business. There was one on diversifying our markets, which is very important. In fact, even when you look at the analysis by Zimtrade of our export markets, we are now concentrated in very few countries, again exporting very limited product range. These are issues that we will be looking at to see how we diversify the markets and as well the products that we are manufacturing. We cannot be an economy that grows by more than 500% in its agriculture, but there is no corresponding growth in manufacturing. It means our value addition is not coming out right so far. I'm not too sure, maybe there was one on forex accessibility auction system. Well, we no longer have an auction system. We have now the willing buyer, willing seller, where anyone who wants foreign currency, they go to their bank. Yes, there are a few bottlenecks there, but it has started working. We hope that it will continue to improve. We're engaging the central bank there so that they can continue to liaise with the banks to avail more foreign currency. Linda,
I'm sure you've done justice to those contributions that came. As we end the show, Mike, your parting remarks, briefly in under a minute. What do you expect moving forward to see the chamber doing in addressing these issues, engaging government to shape policies that benefit your constituency?
Thank you very much. So the primary mandate of the chamber is to engage the authorities for the improvement of the operating environment. So I would like to see my brother and the team continuing to do that. We have a very good working relationship with our government. No wonder why you see we are side by side with our minister, despite what you see being reported at times. So we work well and we tell each other the truth. These issues need to be addressed and for the benefit of all Zimbabweans.
All right. And Tapio, what can we expect during your tenure as a president of the ZNCC, and any parting remarks that you have?
All right, thank you, Linda. I think to our, to use the word loosely, constituents, which is which is commerce or the business sector, is that the chamber knows and appreciates that the business of business is business, right? So our role is to ensure that our members can operate in a sustainable, in a viable operating environment. As my immediate past president has alluded to, our mandate is to continue to advocate issues that business is facing. And in that advocacy, I think what's also critical is that it's a two-way street. As we engage the authorities are also there to engage us as the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, because I think it's very critical that we are able to disseminate information as it comes from our members to the authorities and from the authorities to the members. And if we can do that, I think we can close the gap in terms of how we view things and how we're able to move as a country together.
All right, and the Honourable Minister, as we end the show, any parting remarks that you have, and also the significance of the SADC Industrialization Week that is coming at the end of this month, which will precede the summit of SADC heads of state and government.
Thank you so much, Linda. Let me start with my parting shots, then I'll touch on the SADC Industrialization Week. My marching orders are clear. It's to be the link that facilitates the growth of our industry. And the growth of our industry can be achieved if we are addressing all these issues that have been highlighted, but also if as a country we dare to dream and say how best can we come up with products for tomorrow, products that the world will need tomorrow. We are a country so endowed with precious group of minerals which are then used in these advanced technologies. Do we have people who are focusing on this? Do we have research and development innovation centers that are looking at these issues? My president has been clear in saying that in developing this country, he will leave no one and no place behind. Watch out for a more comprehensive rural industrialization strategy, which will be part of the plan that we are talking about, just to make sure that we are able to identify, nurture, and grow small to medium businesses right across our country. And we'll continue to work very closely with the private sector. We always draw a lot of lessons from them. And as they have highlighted, they are very frank when they discuss with us. And this is how we would want to have it, where we discuss issues affecting business as they are. Coming to the SADC Industrialization Week, this is one which I would really like to encourage our listeners tonight, the business sector in general, to take a keen interest in. SADC as a region came up with a SADC strategy and roadmap where our leaders seek to have an industrialized SADC which is able to compete with other regions. They did so before the coming in of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now it is upon us. Are we ready to compete, to have a broad and strong industrial base which can manufacture for the more than 1.3 billion people? If not, it means that we are slackening somewhere. And this SADC Industrialization Week seeks really to be an introspection to say, member states, here is where we are, and we still need to do so much for us to get to meet our 2063 targets. So we will be having so many exhibitions by the private sector. Mainly it will be private sector led, but we want to come together and say, how do we re-strategize to make sure that we industrialize to take advantage of the opportunities that lie in the future.
Honorable Minister, thank you very much for coming through to the program. And Tapiwa, all the best in your tenure as a ZNCC President. And Mike, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Honorable Minister, thank you once again. I am Linda Muriro, and many thanks to all the listeners that came through with their contributions. Until next time, it is a goodbye for now.
Tiger Wheel and Tire. Simply